parent, like making promises to our kids that we can't keep is like one of my pet peeves. Like, we don't do that. And it bothers me when people do it to my kids because my family was a best case scenario. So it's probably where I learned worst case scenario. And there was a lot of letdown because it was never fulfilled. And so that's something that like Caleb and I talk about a lot.
Hi, friends. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Madison Brown Brush. I always think that's so funny. Like, what is the chances that your maiden name is Brown and then you marry a guy named Brush and then you have a brown brush for your last name? Although I don't think she kept Brown, but brown brush, like, painting brush. Okay. So Madison has a brand new podcast. It is called The Authentic Society, and she and her podcast co-host Jamie speak about all the things. And this most recent episode was about what you take from your parents and what you leave from your parents as you become adults. And Madison spoke about a lot of the interesting aspects of growing up in polygamy. And some of that had to do with finances and having her dad always making promises and not being able to keep them, being let down a lot as a child, financial instability, and being in a home that was very, very, very chaotic. We have talked a bit about the finances of the family. And, McKelty, a couple years ago, said on her Patreon that they were very poor before the show. She had spoken about how there was a point in time when they lived in Wyoming that they didn't have enough food to feed the kids, and they often were given day-old bread from her uncle's bakery. Her dad would purchase MREs in bulk, and sometimes there wasn't even food in the cabinets. I told you about one of their friends visiting them in Wyoming and having nothing in the cabinets but refried beans. So the poverty aspect of this story is often ignored, but it's a motivating factor for why Cody is so obsessed with keeping the show and keeping the wealth, because he was in financial trouble before he started the show. Now, Madison spoke about how something that she saw her dad do as a child had to do with get rich quick schemes, which today she finds not practical.
So my dad always chose to get rich quick scheme, almost always. And that was something like, it was such a foreign thought to Caleb. And I remember like explaining some ideas to him and he's like, no. And like, so we kind of like you build wealth. Poverty mindset is such an interesting thing, especially when it comes to money, because like when we got our tax returns when I was younger, my parents immediately spent it on something. And Caleb's family were both educated and they did not. They saved it. They saved every penny that they could. I mean, they were broke. They were debt phobic. Like, it's realizing that there is no get rich quick, because
No, there's not.
And I think that, and I knew it, but I think like actually saying it out loud, it was such a weird concept.
Cody and the women often were participating in multi-level marketing companies, which are, for the record, get rich quick schemes. Most people that are in MLMs don't make a lot of money. In fact, most people lose. But the draw to these organizations, which incidentally, a lot of them are based out of Utah, is that if you just sell and this person sells and that person sells and you get all these people underneath you, then you're going to become a millionaire because you just have to build your pyramid schemes. She also talked about the fact that growing up, because he was always chasing get rich quick schemes, they didn't have money, which resulted in them spending money faster than they made it. And that because he walked into the show with a poverty mindset, instead of saving the money that they made on the show, they spent it recklessly. So she's talking about how, he would get a tax return and they would spend it right away because they had money to spend. Kody is, if he has money in the pocket and it's burning a hole, he's going to spend that money. He and his wives didn't really have jobs that were well paying. She said that her dad was a signs salesman, neon signs. He was sold guns for a while, though she doesn't talk about that. And he's participating in just odd investments throughout the years in an effort to make money. We've seen on the show some of the bad choices they've made financially when it comes to Coyote Pass, when it comes to properties that they've bought, when it comes to all the crap that's on his walls, how Kody says he never has money. But Kody would have money if he actually saved it. And when the wives all left, he did save some money, enough for him to squander and hide it in a trust fund that he and Robin created so that he could purchase a $2 million home. But again, even though he had the money to put down on a home, he took out a $1.6 million home mortgage. Is that really smart when you are 56 years old to take out a $1.6 million home with an $11,000 a month mortgage payment? But Kody doesn't care. He just thinks about spend, 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 spend. So that's the root of their financial problems. He has a poverty mindset.
Before the show, did you grow up poor?
Yeah. Before the show, we were very poor. I think my dad made decent money, but you have 15 kids. Yeah. It was,
How are you putting all these kids on insurance?
I don't know. That's a great question.
But you guys you and your siblings.
We were, and then we weren't. So my mom was actually in between jobs. She worked for a temp agency for a little while after she got her degree in accounting. And she had just left the temp agency and started with the state. And my appendix ruptured and it was an emergency surgery. So it wasn't on anybody's insurance. So my mom had to pay that off for a while.
That's kind of scary to think that there was that many kids and no insurance.
There was insurance,
but not consistently?
I think it was inconsistent. But this was before Obamacare. This was before you had to have insurance. People paid out of pocket,
Yeah. What about dental?
My mom's kids had it. I think Chris.
Before they started the show, Janelle's kids were on and off insurance. Christine's kids were on and off insurance. During the show, in the very beginning, her kids were actually on Medicaid, Christine's kids, and she received food stamps while living in a house with Kody and claiming that a partner gave her money for living expenses. But then she didn't claim a father for her children. So she received food stamps and Medicaid for her kids, but kids got older, and as they got the show, the Browns didn't use or purchase health insurance until they had to through the Obama Affordable Care Act. However, Christine didn't carry health insurance until 2019. No, until 2020. Christine did not carry health insurance for 8 years for her kids. So when Truly was hospitalized for kidney failure, she had no health insurance. She had no health insurance for that, and her bill for that was astronomical, to the extent that in 2020, she said she was still paying it off, and she owed more than $250,000 still on the medical bill from that hospitalization. She only purchased health insurance when Isabel needed scoliosis surgery. It was the literal first time since the show aired they had health insurance for any of Christine's kids. And when you have that many kids and you want to keep having more kids like Kody did with Robin, and he's not even taking care of Christine's kids and then he adopts Robin's kids, it kind of shows you how money and responsibilities are not the responsibilities of being a parent are secondary to his desire to buy crap. So Kody can go and buy all these houses and he can have all these cars and all this jewelry, but then he has children that don't have health insurance, and then he pushes off their surgeries because he doesn't want to pay out of pocket. And so he is neglecting his children's health care by not having them insured. And that's the problem in polygamy. And that is something that Maddie says that she will not do. She will always have health care for her kids, health insurance for her kids, and they will always be covered. It's just, these are the things they never talk about on the show.
So I knew when I was 13 that I didn't want to be a plural marriage. I knew probably before that, but I could vocalize it at 13. It's like, nah, not doing that. So I think that obviously when you grow up in a plural family and in a cult or a church or whatever you want to call it, I call it a cult, that literally your salvation depends on you living plural marriage. I remember being completely content to go to hell. Like, I was like, we're all going to be there. Like,
I'll meet you there. I'll save you a seat.
yeah, it was like all of like and a lot of like, because I didn't want to, I was pretty much the rebel child. Like, I hung out with the class of rebel children from this cult. And I think I just was content to go to hell.
Do you remember back in season 6, they had a panel at UNLV and it was the Browns on one side and victims of polygamy on the other side? And the victims of polygamy said that the only reason that women choose to live polygamy, and choose is a loose word because they're indoctrinated and coerced, is because they're told that if they don't, they'll go to hell and that they'll lose their families. And that they're promised if they do this, they will get to heaven, they'll have their celestial kingdom, they'll be reunited with family members. And they're made to believe that if they don't, they're going to go straight to hell. And all of the weird, horrible things that happen in hell are going to happen to them. And they are terrified into becoming polygamist wives. They're told from the time they're born they have to do this, or else they're going to have their entire salvation destroyed. You cannot ever say there is choice when there is coercion or threats that your livelihood or your life will be at stake if you do not do something. In the real world, if you didn't know what this is, that's called extortion. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen to you. It's a threat. If you don't practice polygamy, you're going to hell. Can you really say there's a choice then? And the Brown women said that this was their choice. They were not doing this because they would go to hell if they didn't do this, that they wanted to do this and that they were happy. And Mary even said last season that she wasn't in plural marriage because if she didn't do it, she would go to hell. She said it had nothing to do with heaven, but it did. It had to do with going to the celestial kingdom because that's the only reason in their faith that any woman would make this choice. And it's not a choice, again, when you're being extorted with the threat of eternal damnation if you don't. And for people that are very religious and very indoctrinated in an occult mindset, that fear can feel like you're literally threatening to kill them by making that kind of threat. It's extortion, it's coercion, it is why polygamy is illegal in all 50 states. And I'm glad that she is brave enough to say, I wasn't going to care. Like, I was willing to go to hell because I wasn't going to live that way, because she could recognize how dysfunctional it was. She could see the pain and the sadness, and that her dad was never around and that her mom was forced to scrape by. And, on the show, they always talk about how Christine raised the kids. Maddie on this podcast talks more about the fact that her mom left her dad and she was the one at home along with Logan raising the kids to help her mom. They were separated for 5 years, but they would lead you to believe on the show that that was just temporary.
Sometimes people take offense to something that there's not something to take offense to.
Do you think that's because you have a big family and there's just more feelings involved?
I think it was a manipulation. I think some, yes. I also think it was a manipulation thing. Here's the thing is, me saying what I think tactfully and nicely when you ask for an opinion shouldn't be offensive. Or when you're vocalizing your opinion, it shouldn't be offensive. If you disagree, that's fine. But you can't be like, that hurt my feelings. I was like, you literally asked for it.
That clip is in reference to Maddie discussing how in the family that she came from of origin, everyone had to dance around everything and not say anything about anything because someone would always get offended by something and you weren't allowed to have an opinion. And even if you were asked to share your opinion, you were then manipulated and told that you were hurting someone's feelings, you were offending them, or you were not allowed to have that opinion after sharing that opinion. I can think of a lot of times where Cody would do this, but I can also think of Robin doing this, right? So I can think of Robin consistently saying that the kids were being offensive to her, like they offended her by sharing their opinions. I think a perfect example of this is in a tell-all, Christine shared that there was a test personality test that they all took in therapy. Just like I don't know, for a way for Nancy to kind of like break the ice and a tool. It wasn't like anything that's statistically accurate or anything. It was just a tool, something that they could start from to talk about each person's personality. And Robin's personality was suited around drama. And in the description, the need for drama and investing herself in drama and feeling other people's drama and sharing her own drama was how she really connected to people. And this wasn't anything that Christine made up. It was a part of this test and something that she uncovered Nancy when they all took the tests. And Robin took her own test, right? She took her own test. They all took them together. They sat in a office in Nancy's. It was on an episode of Sister Wives. And then Robin is offended when Christine goes to talk to her about the personality test and accuses Christine of calling her dramatic, even though the test said that her personality test is personality type is drawn to drama. And then she can't forgive Christine for years because Christine called her dramatic, and then accuses Christine of taking the test for her and deciding what her personality was. It's manipulative. They all were invited to take the test. They all wanted the feedback, but then when the feedback was given, Christine was offending Robin. So I can see that happening with the kids and Robin. I can also see that happening with Kody and the kids because they're not allowed to share their opinions. It's, and I think that's why Christine said she hated conversations because they're not allowed to really share how they feel about one another because they're always walking on eggshells.
My mom didn't care as much growing up. My dad wasn't around very much. So it was kind of like when he was there, it was kind of, we acted differently.
Same.
But I think my mom and I were, first off, I was the oldest girl, and my mom was in a turbulent relationship. And so I think even at a young age that there was a lot of like leaning on me and friendship, but there was still like hard boundaries. I think, yeah, maybe when I moved to Salt Lake or Logan out for college,
Yeah.
it was like, I think when I turned 18, when I was 18, which is like right before, when it was during my senior year, she just like, all bets are off.
She was asked when the switch happened between your parent acting like a parent and your parent acting like a friend. And I honestly feel like what they're really talking about is parentification, because in a parent-child relationship, parentification means a child taking on the role of almost having to be a parent to the parent and having to be concerned about the parent's needs instead of their own. In the real world, a parent should be only considering the needs of the child, and the child shouldn't have to take care of mom and dad's emotional well-being. That's not their job. Their job is to be a child. Mom and dad are responsible for being mom and dad. But in her world, because her mom and dad were in a very turbulent relationship, I think that's a way of saying abusive one, Janelle relied on Maddie emotionally more than she probably should have. And this is also, to be honest, this is exactly what Isabel has said. This is what Gwendolyn has said about Christine, that because dad wasn't around a lot, they used their kids as emotional sounding boards to help them through things. And their kids also had to help raise their siblings. And so they had dynamics with their parents where they weren't always the parent, or they were the parent to the parent. So I think when Janelle talks about how her kids are well adjusted, I think the truth is that if Maddie is well adjusted, it is in spite of the way she was brought up. It's not because of her upbringing in polygamy. It's because she saw what happened in polygamy and she's doing the exact opposite, basically, and has left the cult. And that's a lot to put on a kid. I mean, you got Kody never around, Kody neglecting the kids financially, Kody neglecting their health care, Kody's financial neglect of the children, his poverty like spending. All of this is continuing, by the way. None of these challenges have changed just because they aren't all together in relationships anymore. Kody still spends like he's poor and just spends it faster than he makes it. He still neglects his children. He still doesn't have all of them under his health insurance. They're still fighting about money. They still have turbulent relationships, and the parents still have unhealthy relationships with the kids. So what were your thoughts? You can check out her whole podcast on Authentic Society's YouTube channel. And if you have experience in this group and want to share it, make sure to sound off below. We are getting pretty close to 400,000 subscribers, and by the end of the year, we would like to get there. Make sure to click on the subscribe button down below and click on that thumbs up button too. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye, guys.